She locked the door, slid down against it, and whispered, "No one saw she was wrong. Someone saw everything." Rain pressed itself against the windows like the world trying to get in, but Lena didn't look up. She sat on the cold kitchen floor of her tiny apartment, shoes still on, hands shaking, holding a rejection letter she already knew by heart. The paper trembled as much as she did. Another, "We regret to inform you." Another door closed. Another reminder that effort didn't always lead to reward. Lena was 28, exhausted and invisible to the world, or so she believed. By day, she worked at a small cafe downtown, smiling until her cheeks ached, apologizing for things that weren't her fault, living off tips that barely paid rent. By night, she worked on her dream, designing sustainable clothing from recycled materials, sketching ideas at a wobbly table under a flickering bulb. She believed in it with everything she had. But belief didn't pay bills. That night she had pitched her designs to what she thought was her final chance, an investor meeting she had waited months for. She had walked in hopeful and walked out hollow. They hadn't even let her finish. "Too risky," they said. "Not scalable. Come back when you're more established." Words that sounded polite but landed like punches. She pressed her forehead to her knees and let the tears fall. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet, defeated crying, the kind you do when you don't want the neighbors to hear. She felt foolish for dreaming so big from such a small place. Across the street, on the top floor of a glass building that looked nothing like her crumbling apartment, Adrian Cole stood by a window, hands in his pockets, watching the rain blur the city lights. Adrian was a self-made millionaire by 35, known for his sharp instincts and colder reputation. People said he didn't invest in people, only numbers, that he had no patience for weakness. But tonight his attention wasn't on markets or screens. It was on a single light glowing in a small apartment across the street. He had noticed it weeks ago, always on late, always steady. And sometimes, like tonight, he noticed her. Not in a creepy way, not because he intended to, but because something about that light felt familiar. Loneliness recognizes loneliness. Through the window, he saw her slide down the door. He couldn't hear her, but he didn't need to. He saw the way her shoulders collapsed, the way her hands clenched the paper, the way she covered her face like she was ashamed of her tears. And for reasons he couldn't explain, Adrian didn't turn away. Lena didn't know she was being watched. She didn't know that someone who had everything was seeing her at the exact moment she felt she had nothing. She wiped her face, stood up, and did something unexpected. She went back to the table. Still crying, still shaking, she opened her sketchbook. She drew through the pain, lines messy, ideas raw. She whispered to herself, "Just one more try." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Adrian leaned closer to the glass. He had seen confidence before. He had seen ambition dressed in expensive suits. But this quiet refusal to quit while completely broken, this was different. That night, Adrian didn't sleep. And Lena didn't quit. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives had just collided without ever meeting. And the most important part, this was only the beginning. When she finally learned the truth, her first reaction wasn't gratitude. It was fear. Because the man who helped her succeed had been watching long before she ever knew his name. Weeks passed. Lena kept working. Rejection still came, but something strange happened. Opportunities started slipping through the cracks of her struggle. A local boutique agreed to showcase 2 of her designs. A blogger featured her work unexpectedly. Orders trickled in. Not enough to celebrate, but enough to breathe. What Lena didn't know was that Adrian Cole had made a decision the night he watched her refuse to give up. He didn't hand her money. He didn't swoop in like a savior. Instead, he quietly nudged the world around her. A call here, a recommendation there, anonymous support, strategic exposure. He wanted to see what she would do if given just a little air, and she soared. Every step forward, Adrian watched, not from obsession but admiration. He saw her mess up and recover. He saw her thank people even when she was exhausted. He saw her stay late, care deeply, and choose integrity over shortcuts. Eventually, fate forced them into the same room. Lena had been invited to speak at a small entrepreneurship panel, terrified, underprepared, and convinced she didn't belong. When she stepped on stage, her eyes scanned the audience and landed on him. Adrian Cole, she recognized him instantly. Everyone did, her voice shook as she spoke, but she told her story honestly. The failures, the nights on the floor, the fear of being unseen. And when she finished, the room was silent. Adrian stood up. He introduced himself, then said something no one expected. "I didn't invest in her because of her designs," he said calmly. "I invested because I saw her keep going when she thought no one was watching." Lena's heart stopped. After the event, she confronted him, not angry but overwhelmed. "You watched me?" she asked, unsure whether to feel exposed or grateful. "I saw you," he corrected gently, "at your worst and at your strongest, and you were the same person in both moments." Was no romance in that moment, just truth, respect, and understanding. With Adrian's open support and her own relentless effort, Lena's brand grew into something bigger than either of them imagined. But more importantly, Lena grew. She stopped apologizing for dreaming. She stopped measuring her worth by rejection letters. Years later, standing in her own studio, Lena remembered that night on the floor. The night she thought she was alone. She smiled, knowing now what she didn't then. Even when the world feels empty, even when it seems no one cares, how you act when you think no one is watching can change everything. Because sometimes, the moment you almost give up is the moment your life is quietly being rewritten. And the strongest light is the one you keep on for yourself.